Humans. We have evolved to dominate every species on Earth. We have found that our biggest competition as humans are other humans. With our cruelty, greed, and aggression, we truly are the biggest threat to ourselves. But our greatest struggle throughout history is with distribution. Whether it's distribution of food or power, we as a species have always been pretty lackluster at it. When humans began to get organized during the agricultural revolution, which took place around 10,000 BC, we start to see at a small scale how humans naturally divide up power. Usually, there's a dominant personality that gains the favor of his peers and is chosen to lead. We begin to see the first organized conflicts between tribes. These conflicts were primitive, but they were fighting for what humans have been fighting over our entire existence: food, territory, and power. Now let's fast forward all the way to ancient Greece, because 2,000 years ago, they had a pretty good thing going on. In the Athenian democracy, all male citizens had equal political rights, freedom of speech, and the opportunity to participate in politics. But one of the most famous philosophers of all time, Socrates, disagreed heavily with democracy. Socrates argued that voting in an election was a skill that not everyone in the population had, so this would diminish the quality of the elected leaders. He more despised the Athenian system, especially the system of randomly choosing people for positions of power. He thought this was even more idiotic because it takes more skill to hold political office than to vote. Now let's move forward to one of the most powerful leaders of the ancient world, Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great had an unprecedented era of power as he conquered the largest empire of his time, the Persian Empire. His government was that of an empire and featured the same massive expansion and sharp decline that military states have shown throughout history. Like many great generals, he was great at conquering and lackluster at building. After his death, the territory he had conquered would split into 3 separate empires. Moving on to a civilization that did last a long time, the ancient Romans had an incredibly interesting run as they transitioned through multiple types of political systems. It all started with the totally true story of Romulus and Remus, 2 brothers who were raised by wolves and would grow up to fight for who would be the first king of Rome. Romulus would win. The kingdom of Rome only lasted from 753 to 509 BC, making it the shortest time period in Roman history. Following the fall of the kingdom, Rome transitioned into a much longer stage, the Roman Republic. The Roman Republic lasted about twice as long as the kingdom, from 509 BC to 27 BC. In the Roman Republic, there are 2 broad classes, the patricians and the plebeians. The patricians were the aristocrats of wealthy families, and the plebeians were the regular citizens. There was also a very large slave class that the economy depended on. This consisted of prisoners of war, immigrants, and of people who were enslaved as punishment for crimes as well. The Roman Republic had a Senate comprised of senators that were elected by the patricians or the elite class. These senators would elect 2 consuls that would serve as the leaders of the Senate. A major checks and balances form for this was that consuls could only serve 1 year and could not serve again for another 10 years. This system of power was changed when Julius Caesar ran for consul with the financial support of a wealthy man named Crassus, and the 2 of them, along with the accomplished general Pompey, formed the first triumvirate. Caesar, of course, would eventually gain total control as Crassus died in battle and Pompey was defeated by Caesar and his army quite easily.